Okay, I think we're recording. Oh yeah, we're supposed to talk to YouTube. Or not. It doesn't matter.
Well, we can.
Uh,
Good. Happy to see you. Merry Christmas. Well, I was actually sorry. Let's start over again.
okay. I'll just cut the front part out of
Okay.
it.
Happy Thanksgiving and happy Black Friday if you so-called like that type of shopping endeavor. I don't. With the advent of the internet, that has been my I'll call it Black Friday e-style, but I don't even do that. So, how about you? How was things with you there, Jason?
I'm doing fine. Great Thanksgiving. Got family in. Cooked a big meal. Well, I didn't cook the big meal. I cooked the turkey. Smoked the turkey. And I'm not a Black Friday person at all. When I go Black Friday shopping, it's usually to some obscure store, or I wait till like the afternoon when all the crazy people have already gone to bed from being up all night. And I don't go on Thanksgiving night. We didn't get a chance to this year, but we usually go see a movie Thanksgiving night. That was a tradition for a very long time, especially when the boys are little.
Mm-hmm.
We're little, but we haven't done that in a couple of years. Uh, but yeah, it was great. Great time of year. Just kicked off the Christmas season. Got the tree up today and started watching those wonderful specials. So many of them out there that are great.
Oh yes.
Uh, Not a lot of Thanksgiving. There's a few Thanksgiving ones that I'll hit each year. Actually, rediscovered a couple that I had never seen before this year. One being there was a special called Thanksgiving in the Land of Oz. That was like a half hour animated special in 1980. And it was like a new tale of the Wizard of Oz, new characters, except for Dorothy and Toto mainly. But
It sounds like
interesting.
the Return to Oz that they had.
Yeah, it was just a totally separate thing. Um, I had never heard of it until a couple weeks ago, and then when I found it, I was like, "What's this?" And watched it and put a little review together for the Retro Network. But yeah, not too many of them on Thanksgiving. You get Charlie Brown and you get Garfield and watch a little planes, trains, and automobiles, and that's about it for Thanksgiving.
I
I
agree. I think
watching football and the parade mainly, you know.
I think out of all three of those, I would it'd be kind of a toss up between Plane, Trains, and Automobiles and the Charlie Brown
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving.
One other weird one I had for Thanksgiving is going back to the WPIX days that we talk about. They always played Laurel and Hardy's March of the Wooden Soldiers on Thanksgiving. And that was a tradition for the longest time. I think probably still is. I don't pick up WPIX anymore all the way down here, but I got a DVD years ago, and I'll pop that in usually in the morning on Thanksgiving and just have it as background noise as I'm going about the day. And usually I get eyes rolling from everybody in the house. I don't know. It's tradition, you know,
Just the nostalgia of what we grew up with.
basically. Well, we've got an awesome review to get to tonight. Our second in this series that's a movie for Rediscovered. And it's going to be fun to kind of go through this one and talk about little monsters. I had not watched this in, I don't know, since the early 90s, I would say.
This was my first time through, so this
Was it? Okay.
yeah,
This is going to be interesting then.
yes it will.
All right. Well, you got your notes ready? You ready to go?
We're ready to start it.
All right. I'll get us going here. Thanks everybody for checking us out on YouTube. We'll give you a little wrap up at the end too. But here we go for Rediscovered number 6, I think. Welcome back to the Rediscover the 80s podcast and another episode of Rediscovered, where we review obscure and overlooked TV shows, movies, and cartoons, some of which we have not seen since its initial release, others that missed us altogether. I'm one of your hosts, Jason. With me is my longtime friend and co-host, who always joins me. It is Wyatt. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Anxious to get another movie review under our belt. And this one we actually talked about, I guess, at RetroCon this year, right? This is where we came up with the idea.
It is. If you've been any type of follower, especially on this series or venture called Rediscovered, we typically don't announce what we're going to be talking about because we try to find out if it's even available to watch.
Right.
So for you, the viewer and listener, it's a real surprise of what we're going to be talking about. For us, it's almost equally a surprise because we have to make sure we can actually find it.
You're right.
So this is fun. And like Jason said, some of these we've kind of remember, we might faintly think about, or it's missed us altogether. And that's where I fall in for this movie called Little Monsters. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, we were actually in line at RetroCon, and the plan was to get this recorded and submitted and ready to go, released for Halloween. And obviously, we're a little late on that, but not necessarily a Halloween movie. But yeah, we were talking in line, and that's what kind of spawned the idea. I had remember seeing this on Amazon, and I had remember watching it a long, long time ago, and thought it'd be fun to be our second movie review in the series. And yeah, that's my memory. I watched it early on. It wasn't in the theater. I would say it was probably a rental in the early 90s. Probably right around 1990, right after it came out to video. Because I remember it being in my first house, my childhood home, and I moved out of there I think right around 90 or 91, and associating this movie with something maybe being under my bed. That's what I think about my childhood bedroom, kind of when I watched that, and that's what kind of stuck out in my mind. But let's go through a few of the stats here as we are talking about Little Monsters. It was released August 25th, 1989. Starring Fred Savage and Howie Mandel. It was rated PG for adult situations and language and a little bit of violence. And the tagline for it were, "Some friends can be real monsters, and some monsters can be real friends." It had and I was doing some research. It doesn't, a lot of the box office sites have not available for what the budget was. Wiki has it as $7 million. So I don't know where that information kind of came from, but the worldwide total for this movie was only about 800,000.
Ouch.
And only shown in 179 theaters upon its release. And we'll get into a little bit of the kind of what happened with the release and everything, but the rating on this really isn't too great. IMDb, you get 6.1 out of 10 on average, and the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is 62%. So still in that above, in the majority, but just by a little bit. So yeah, that was a little surprising to me that it didn't have a wide release. Because I remember, I don't know if it was just maybe being in the video store that I was excited about it or hearing about it. Seemed to have a little bit of hype, but like I said, I didn't see it in the theater, and I guess it missed you altogether, like you said. Had you heard about it at all, or maybe scrolled past and seen it, or over the years maybe seen it in a DVD bin?
Over the years, yes, I've seen it, and I completely have no idea what this thing is about. Never heard of it. Kind of started associating it with the 80s. But I was never curious I just kind of one of those where I just kind of glossed through because I don't
Mhm.
recall it. So I guess it's one of those where it's not a fan favorite. So why bother? That
Yeah.
was my probably my thought process if I've seen it in the $5 bin.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely more of a cult status, or uh, I don't know, definitely in the obscure category, because it's not one that a lot of people go back to year after year for a holiday viewing or whatever. It's just one of those that, oh, hey, it popped up on Amazon this time, and
Right.
yeah, let's revisit it. So let's go into a little bit of the development in the crew behind the picture. If you want to take that, Wyatt.
It was directed by Richard Allen Greenberg, his only film. Directed one episode of Tales from the Crypt, mainly known for the title, design, and special effects. He was nominated for an Oscar for his visual effects work in Predator, but he later died in 2018. It was written by Terry Rossio and Ted Elliott. Their first project for the writing team went on to write for Aladdin, the Shrek franchise, Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, and kind of a slew of others,
Yeah,
which is fascinating to learn. He
yeah,
was
and
still work.
he's.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say he was still working and writing for King Kong versus Godzilla for the 2020 and the live action Johnny Quest movie, which is still in development.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to see this was kind of his first project, or the team's first project,
Hmm.
and then wow, writing for the original Disney Aladdin and the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, which has been really successful,
Right.
and some of the other ones there in Disney, National Treasure, and yeah, that's pretty cool that this is where they got their start.
Little Monsters was originally set to be distributed by Vestron Pictures, and a trailer was even created by Vestron that was advertised on some of their VHS releases. But due to Vestron's financial difficulties at the time, the film was sold to United Artists, although Vestron did retain some foreign rights to the film. That's interesting. Um, you think about the advertising you get even now on DVDs. It's not so much, but um, you still got one or two, maybe three at most ads.
Hmm.
But then you see this Vestron Pictures was basically the lead and just unfortunately couldn't pay the bill. It looked like
Right.
they had to end up selling it to United Artists, which is at the time was a big company,
Yeah.
but they were
They
smart to at least try to say keep something, even if it's the foreign rights, just something I guess to
yeah.
cling to.
I can't remember exactly when they went under. Actually, United Artists, I think, was bought out at one point too,
They were
because they were that was the James Bond uh, production company, or license, or distribution company, for the longest time, was United Artists, and I think that was part of why the film just didn't get distributed the way they wanted to, was the failure, and then United Artists kind of coming in and at the last minute to pick up the pieces.
right.
So, and let's go into a little bit of the broadcast and home video history. It was a direct VHS video in 1989, runtime 88 minutes. DVD in 2003 by Artisan Entertainment. MGM also released it in 2004, and then it was combined with a couple other movies. This movie Igor by MGM in 2010 released with that, and there was another combo pack with Igor, Laboo, Little Monsters, and Mac and Me. That was in 2011, and then it was also released on a Mill Creek DVD, The Decade You Were Born, the 80s, in 2012. And we actually, when I watched it, actually found it on Netflix, not Amazon, like I was thinking. So, and I haven't checked to see, since we're now nearing December, to see if it's still available there on Netflix. I think it is. So that's kind of the uh, the broadcast history of it. It went pretty much, it had the small release and then right to video
Mm.
that same year in '89. And then we'll get on to a little bit of the music behind it here. And a couple songs kind of stuck out to me that I wrote down here, Wyatt.
Right. The two original songs were written for the movie by Billy Hughes. I Want to Yell and Magic of the Night. I've heard Magic of the Night. I can't place I Want to Yell.
Mm-hmm.
Other songs include Talking Heads, Road to Nowhere over the end credits. It was never released because of the pending bankruptcy of Vestron Pictures.
Yep. Never got a soundtrack release officially. So, yeah, they had enough to hire this Billy Hughes guy to write two songs for it and to license that Talking Head song over the end credits. So, that was usually good enough to get a soundtrack release and maybe add in some of the score, which I didn't write down who composed the score in this one. The synopsis, just really quickly. Lonely 11-year-old Brian, who's played by Fred Savage, makes an unusual friend when he captures Maurice, played by Howie Mandel, the mischievous monster who lives under his bed, and stumbles into an exciting new world where mythical creatures really exist. When Brian learns that he, too, will become a monster unless he turns his back... unless he turns... What? Let's see, turns his back, Maurice. I screwed that up. Maybe that was to help. He helps turn back Maurice. He will become a monster unless he helps to turn back Maurice. However, he struggles with the prospect of losing the only real friend he's ever known. Let's go through the cast now. We'll kind of go back and forth with this, Wyatt, and just talk about all the actors seen in the film, and we can start with
You look like you're lost. I'm sorry.
I'm just that just kind of threw me off the plot. Who played Brian Stevens, basically the star of the film, and he was the child actor in the '80s. We all know him from The Wonder Years. He was also in The Princess Bride when they get back to the point where they're reading the story and then, living out the story. And then we'll shout out my friend Chad Young from the horror movie Barbecue, whose one of his favorite movies is The Wizard, which was, I don't know what year that was. If it was 89, it was right around that time, maybe 1990. Have you ever seen that one where they go on this road trip and they go to this like huge Nintendo tournament to compete in, and they're playing Super Mario Brothers 3. It was like brand new.
I've heard of it, but I've never watched it.
It's been a long time since I watched it, but I have seen it. But yeah, he was a pretty big star back in the 80s, mainly for the Wonder Years, I would say, but very recognizable face, and I think he did advertising as well, a lot of commercials and stuff.
That brings us to Maurice Monster, who was played by Howie Mandel. Started as a stand-up comedian, which is the only place I remember him being, along with being the voice actor for Bobby's World in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
He was Gizmo in the Gremlins, which I was not aware of, and he was played in the TV show Saint Elsewhere. I'm sure my folks watched that. I did not.
Right.
And now he is host of Deal or No Deal. Oh, that's right. He's now on America's Got Talent. I've seen him as I flip through very rarely.
Yeah. He's more hosting duties now, and I haven't watched America's Got Talent really at all. Did get into Deal or No Deal for when it was fresh and new.
Yeah.
But I haven't watched that in a while. But yeah, I didn't realize he had a pretty good voice acting career as well. I knew about Bobby's World, and I knew that was kind of his thing. But Gizmo and Gremlins, I had heard that before, but that was not one that I just could have spouted off, that was one of his credits. And St. Elsewhere is where he got his start. But yeah, we all knew him. At least I remember him being a stand-up comedian back in the 80s and being on some of those Showtime specials.
You're gonna have to repeat that. You pixelated. Hello? Hello?
I'm here.
There you are.
Hello.
There you are.
Okay.
We were talking about um,
Howie.
Gizmo and some more voice actor
Okay.
stuff, and that's when it started really cutting out on you.
Okay. Yeah, I knew him from Bobby's World in the '90s, and uh, did not know he had kind of a extended voice acting career and being Gizmo and Gremlins. I mean, I did know that and had heard that over the years, but it's not one that I would have spouted it off really quickly when you think about Howie Mandel. But I think most of us know him from being a stand-up comedian in the '80s and being on those like HBO and Showtime specials,
Hmm.
uh, more or less. But let's go on to Eric Stevenson, Brian's younger brother, who was played by Fred Savage's brother, Ben Savage. And this was his first role. He would probably mainly know him as Corey in the '90s teen sitcom Boy Meets World. But yeah, this was his first acting role in his career. So, and I thought he did a pretty good job, and all the Savages did a good job in the picture.
Yeah. That moves us on to Glenn Stevenson, who plays Brian's dad, played by Daniel Stern. Most of us will probably remember him from Home Alone 1 and 2 as one of the, what is it, the waterwork
The
crowd? I
wet
can't remember.
the wet bandits.
The Wet Bandits, that's it. Um,
Yeah, Marv.
Marv,
Marv.
yeah. He cleaned up
Mm-hmm.
pretty good on this movie. Almost didn't recognize him. He also played on City Slickers 1 and 2. I've seen City Slickers. I can't place him on the first one.
Yeah, he was just one of the crew there that go out there to the west and move the cattle. One of
Yeah.
Billy Crystal's friends. I actually just watched it. It was recently on the Roku channel,
Oh,
and I hadn't watched it in years.
that's interesting. He was also on Blue Thunder, which, I mean, it's been years for both of those movies for me.
Mm-hmm.
But he was the narrator voice of Fred Savage in the Wonder Years, which was interesting to
Yeah,
hear.
that little
They actually
connection
have a
there.
very good working relationship, at least.
Right, right. That was interesting. Um, and then we get to Holly Stevenson, who plays Brian's mother. She was played by Margaret Whitten. You would best know her as the owner of the Cleveland Indians in the Major League movies. She was also in one of my favorite Michael J. Fox movies, Secret of My Success, Baby Boom, and she also had various guest roles on television. And she sadly passed away in 2016 at 67 of cancer.
Then we have just a boy who is the ruler of the monster world, played by Frank Wally. He had a lot of guest roles in movies and TV, but we might remember him from the young Archie Graham in Field of Dreams. He played in The Freshman, The Doors, JFK, Pulp Fiction, Broken Arrow, and just a few slew of other ones.
Yep.
I still can't place him. I'm sorry, but I'm sure he's there.
Yeah, he's just more of a quick character actor in a lot of these movies and is still acting today. Call him in and just for basically short parts, it seems like, in all of these movies. But Field of Dreams is one of my favorite sports movies, probably my favorite baseball movie. And yeah, it's hard to recognize him with all the makeup and stuff in the movie as boy, but
Yeah.
um, I did know him from Field of Dreams. And then we'll go to Snick, who is Boy's right-hand man, and he's also played by Rick Ducommun. He was also the TV commercial host at the very beginning there. But the his earliest TV appearance was on Star Search as one of the comedians, and he took second place behind Brad Garrett. Brad Garrett is the brother on Everybody Loves Raymond. He did a lot of voice work. So I thought that was interesting. I had not known that about him, that he was on Star Search. But he's been a slew of movies, again, mostly in the supporting actor role. You would know him as Art on The Burbs. He was in Die Hard, Spaceballs, Hunt for Red October, Groundhog Day, Gremlins 2, and the list goes on. And he sadly passed away in 2015 at 62 with from complications with diabetes. Very funny guy. I kind of liken him a little bit. He's not quite. He's kind of the poor man's John Candy, I'll say.
Mhm.
But I loved him in The Burbs as Tom Hanks's neighbor there. Very funny comedian.
That brings us to Ronnie Coleman, who was played by Devin Rattray.
Mm-hmm.
He played Buzz from Home Alone 1 and 2. We all know who he is. He was the brat that was driving Macaulay Culkin crazy.
Yeah.
Then he played in the Nebraska films. Played Dennis the Menace. Guest TV roles in Agent Carter, The Tick, and Hawaii Five-0. The new or the old?
The new.
Okay, just double check.
Yeah.
I haven't watched either, so I have no idea.
We watched a couple seasons of Hawaii Five-0, but I haven't not watched that. I had not remember him being in Dennis the Menace too. It's been a while since I watched that movie.
Yeah.
From the early 90s. But yeah, there's another connection there to Daniel Stern being in Home Alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Kirsten, the girl at Brian's school, played by Amber Barretto. She was in the 90s teen sitcom Hang Time. But that's pretty much all that I saw. It didn't look like she got into acting much beyond this. And then we've got one more.
One more Savage.
Yes.
This is kind of like, what is it? I'm blanking out. There was a tribe of them up in the late 80s, early 90s. They were boys. I can't remember them.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Kayla Savage, she was Fred and Ben's sister. She played a monster, which was her first role. And that's pretty much it for the main cast that played. And we're going to look at kind of reviewing some of our least favorite scenes, characters, and the like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I'll start talking about our favorite scenes from the movie. I just kind of like the beginning story about Brian just moving in, and he's the big brother getting blamed for everything that Maurice was doing at night. There's some really fun scenes at the beginning of the movie before he meets Maurice, and everybody's kind of coming down on him. Like I said, the bike in the driveway, it gets backed over, and making a mess with the food and stuff at night. I just thought that was fun. One of more of the funnier, I guess, comedy, or they did a good job kind of setting up the overall story at the beginning. What about you? What's some of your favorite, or what's a favorite scene for you?
Well, I actually had a tough time with this. I kind of like the call it the MacGyver in me, where he makes this kind of a MacGyver gadget with bicycle parts to basically detect or to slam his bed.
Right.
Pull the legs out from under it and slam it down on the floor. That I actually liked because it was very crafty, and then he uses like Doritos to bait the guy, and it doesn't work quite right, but I love the invention of it.
Yeah,
that's probably one of the only favorite scenes in the whole movie. I probably really liked. If there's for Masscast, I think you already know where my rating is.
Well, yeah, the reason for that was he's trying to trap Maurice in the real world. So luring him out from underneath his bed and then dropping the bed on the door, essentially,
right?
So he could essentially confront him and all that. That was a little bit, I guess, over the top with what he was able to do with the bed, but still fun nonetheless. And then just another part of it for me. I just liked the monster world. It was fun. It was just like a utopia for kids, all the food that they could want, and it's all like sweets and goodies. They play just crazy games, and all the mischief you could ever want was down in this world.
That I could probably see as a second favorite because
Yeah,
exactly as a kid, you would love to be able to play video games for forever and ever and almost do whatever you want, eat whatever you want, and so forth. So I guess in
sure.
that mindset, I
And
can see
then
that. Yeah.
yeah, and then that scene where they're playing baseball, and I think Howie refers to it as breaking S word. Uh,
Yeah.
it was just baseball, and like the outfield is pretty much everything: knickknacks, glass, vases, whatever, and you're trying to break them. Uh, it was just crazy down there. You think if kids are if there was ever the kind of this underground secret world that you could do anything you wanted to do, they pretty much got everything right that's
Yeah.
down in there. All the crazy food you could want, and then just being mischievous, to your heart's content. All right, what was I guess then we'll go on the other side of the coin here, and what didn't you like about the movies, the scenes in particular?
Well, there's one that you've jotted on your notes, and that was where he's drinking the jar of piss. I mean, geez, that was just a nasty. I'm sure it was bubbly apple juice or whatever to make it semi-palatable, but I think I would have been even on the. I cut like 10. I'd be probably still hurling or whatever if I were Fred
Yeah.
Savage. But that was just nasty.
Well, yeah, that was I had forgotten about that part totally. And but Buzz was being Buzz in this
Yeah.
movie. He's the bully and just trying to get a little payback at him, and then yeah, Maurice whips it out and hey, let's trade out his apple juice for some urine. And then the next day at school, that was pretty
Yeah.
nasty.
No, thanks. Ugh.
Yeah. And one thing that I didn't like about it, it was just a little creepy that, everybody's worried about voyeurism and all this now. We even talked about it on a separate show about, cameras being set up and making sure that you're not on the network. It's a closed circuit,
Yep.
kids are safe. But just the whole premise of the story is they've got all these doors underneath everybody's bed that they can just walk in while people are sleeping, and it was just a little weird, kind of creepy almost that you're they're sneaking into that girl, the girl that he liked at school.
Yeah, really.
And it's funny they move the bed when the bed like comes up, when they come out of the
Like
door.
a hinge, yeah.
Yeah, and like you wouldn't wake up from that, but yeah, it was just weird to me. Kind of creeped me out. Being in somebody's bedroom when they're sleeping, not
Yeah.
knowing you're there. Ugh. Anyway, what else for you? Anything else that you
Well, I
didn't
would
really
second
like?
that. But the other thing that was kind of odd is the midnight snack choice, which was peanut butter and onion. I'm already kind of slowly doing the Jim Carrey gag with peanut butter and banana, but
Yeah,
peanut butter and onion. I mean, I'm just doing that whole
yeah,
gag scene right there.
yeah. Another thing that I really wasn't fond of, and I'm just going back to the time and what the capabilities and technology that they had back then, but some of the scenes where Maurice is melting because of the daylight,
Yep.
they just looked a little off when he's like melting or whatever he's doing uh, in his clothes. And his clothes are just there, when the sunlight hits, and you got to hurry up and put him back in the, under the bed or in the darkness. But just the transformation there and the mannerisms and stuff and how they did that, just I don't know, was kind of weird to me. Didn't really fit, and it could have been due to budgetary
Could be.
reasons that they weren't able to do more with those effects around, Maurice getting shrunk by the daylight. But it was just a little cheesy.
That's the best way to put it.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about as far as the likes or dislikes from the like scenes or parts of the movie?
Not really scenes. I think that puts us on to what we think about the characters.
Yeah. I would say probably my favorite was just Maurice, and it was weird thinking that that's Howie Mandel under the makeup.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of hard to picture it at first, and then there are little things and just the way he talks, and he didn't really put too much of anything on his voice, but he was fun, a little over the top at times, but still, probably the most entertaining character of the whole movie. How about you?
I could see that. I could see him being over the top or most entertaining, but he was annoying to me.
Yeah.
So if I'm picking a favorite character, I think I actually liked um, Fred's character. He was. I wouldn't be scared of what's underneath my bed, but I wanted to be that kid that could get away with anything. Right? You could have a kind of something of a reasonable head on your shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
saying, no, we can't do this, we can't do that. But he gets sucked into going under the bed. He gets sucked into
Right.
being the scapegoat for whatever's happening because Maurice is causing all the problems. You know, uh, so I guess I can see that as being, if I don't know, I think Brian was probably the better
Mm-hmm.
character of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. None of the other characters really stuck out to me.
No.
Even the other monsters, um, they were some. There was some interesting makeup and costume choices and everything that they made in the monster world, and some of the set designs were really cool with the
Hmm.
staircases and how they showed going up to each bed and everything. That was pretty cool, but. Uh, None of the other characters really stood out to me. My least favorite, really, character, part, whatever you want to call it, were just Brian's parents, and it was kind of strange to me. This being more of at least I was coming into it, more of a comedy, more of a fun movie, and there were some really hard nosed
Yep.
adult type themes
Yes.
in the movie, mainly between the parents and the parents fighting and getting a divorce and going through all that. So I don't know, and I kind of went through some of those bad memories when I was a kid, which is probably why I didn't like them. And it was nothing to say that it was really over the top as far as the parents acting or anything. I thought Stern and the wife they did a pretty good job, but it was strange to kind of interject that into a movie about the secret world and having fun, and all of a sudden you got to go through these hard times,
Right.
and just you could almost feel for uh, uh, Fred Savage's character, uh,
Brian. Yeah.
Brian. Yeah, you could just feel for him, Brian, at certain points in the movie trying to process everything because you had this like utopia, and then you come back to the real world, and
Hmm.
your parents are getting a divorce. I mean, it was some pretty hard nosed stuff, but that was just kind of I don't know. It just brought up kind of some bad memories for me, so didn't really care for that. What about you? What has kind of turned you off? It sounds like I guess from the movie.
Quite a bit, but if we're the least favorite, I would actually side with you on this because you and I both went through the same similar avenues of our parents divorcing, and the fighting on what happens in the whole. It's not you, it's us, and the whole thing. And I guess what I didn't like about it is late '80s, early '90s seemed to throw it at us in the movies.
Hmm.
Probably Hollywood trying to say this is the real world now, so we're just trying to embrace it and attack it the best way we know how. But to me, that whole thing. And I get when we get to the end of the movie, I understand that wasn't, they try to get back together because of the whole looking for the brother, looking for
Mhm.
Brian,
Right.
and the whole nine. It ends up making them think what's more important. But I don't know. It felt like it was thrown into us, that
Yeah.
whole scene. And like you said, you and I both went through this separately with our own parents. So it rekindled a lot of things. To
Yeah.
see your sibling probably taking it harder than you are. And I dealt with that. I know you didn't, but I did. And it was
Mhm.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It was a pretty big dynamic in the movie,
it
and
was.
it kind of it took away some, I think, of again just having fun with it. So you've got to almost get grounded into this whole reality while you're at the same time living in this, you know,
Right.
crazy utopia.
Right. And, here we're looking at a fictional movie. I'm sorry
Mhm.
to break it down, but you're looking at a fictional movie that has that true world, that
Mhm.
utopia that he could go to, stay there, and not have to deal with this, or he has to come back to reality where, obviously real life, the best utopia we can figure out is what we do or do not create in our minds, and
Mhm.
we are living in the real world. We just can kind of fade out for a few minutes, if not at least overnight, and well, we're back in this dilemma again.
Right.
So I get what they're trying to do in the movie, but yeah, it was probably one of my, like you, it was probably one of my least favorite characters in this snapshot in time with those parents going through that divorce.
Yeah. Uh, so just kind of coming back around and looking at the movie overall, um, I think the thing that stuck with me the most, at least from the first watching that I remember, was the kind of plot for the movie and the story. I remember, many times I had this bed that had drawers in the front that you could open, but it only went about halfway back underneath the bed. So back behind my bed, I could actually, hide stuff back there, whatever I wanted to do. I could even crawl back there when I was a smaller kid. So I had this whole dynamic where I still had that like open area under my bed under there, and I remember thinking when I'm down there, where's the door? Where's the where's the door to this monster world? So that stuck with me, has stuck with me over the years, and that's probably the most memorable thing, even after watching it now all these years later, about the movie. It's just the concept, the overall story that was created and written. It was pretty fun concept, but they interjected some stuff that I really didn't care for either. In that, wow, the language. And I know it was a different time, and PG movies back in the '80s allowed a lot more language.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, if you go back and watch, for instance, The Goonies, or um, trying to think of some other ones that I've gone back and watched, and had kind of an eye-opening experience, especially for the ages my kids are now. So, having said that, I would not be comfortable showing this
No.
movie to my kids, just with the level of language in it. And I think about this movie, and I think about when we go through these reviews and some memorable lines or quotes or parts of the movie, and most of the stuff that I laughed at and stuff revolved around some like I was saying, like the breaking stuff game that they played. It
Right.
revolves around uh strong language and people drinking piss, and I probably thought that was hilarious as a kid, but now I'm like, no.
No. Yeah.
It's just not something I cover. What do you think now overall watching it, and uh is there anything that you would take away from it, or are you just pretty much ready to move on to the next thing we're going to talk about?
There wasn't Honestly, there wasn't too much I liked about the movie. Howie was way. I'm in the dislike, but I'm not meaning to be. I'm kind of like chipping it out. I
Mm-hmm.
think the only thing that I really liked at it was probably the MacGyver like invention with the bike, bike parts. There was a funny part in my notes that I don't understand my chicken scratch here, but there was a funny part out of the whole movie. It's somewhere in the parents scene where they're angry after all the gags. They're all the tricks and everything that's going on. They're angry, and somehow I found humor in that, and I marked it down as such, but I don't remember why I wrote it down that way. Um, but there wasn't much. The story I get, but I I just it was one of those movies I don't know that, like you said, the PG rating, and that was not PG, that was PG-13. I would rate it as
Yeah.
PG-13.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll just go ahead and transition because there was just I could sit here all day like you with the panda power on Mask. I could sit here all day long and make it a 1 because it was just excuse me, the the ultra zoom started me off. I don't know if you noticed it, but it was just too zoomed in. Maybe it was my version of Netflix,
Uh-huh.
but it just looked like I was in your face the whole time with Howie and with Fred and the whole thing. I'm like, dude, are you hiding the set because it sucks? I mean, what's going on? They have to zoom in everybody. Um, Howie was just like I said. I like Murdoch, and he's off the cuff. Holy cow, Howie really came apart, and I just didn't like the character.
Yeah.
Um, just the whole divorce thing we talked about. Um, yeah, it, and then the whole going from one side of the states to the other, all on this underground dream world that looked like nothing more than a couple pallets nailed together, and that made it all the pathway. I'm like, really? You couldn't have come up with something better than pallets. I mean, I get it,
Yeah.
cheap, especially if you lost 7.2 million at it, but still, you know that there's better dressings for
Yeah.
uh, sets and stuff, especially if you're making a movie. But anyway, that. What about you? What did you dislike?
Well, that was a little ridiculous as far as they traveled and thinking about that. Could have been possible, I guess so, but uh, your mind goes to places like that. On really, they went all the way over there, and then they pick up the phone and come pick
Right.
us up. Come pick us up. We're here in California. Oh, really? You know, how'd you get out there? We'll explain it to you later.
And then they
And
end the movie. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
then
no.
they walk off on the beach there. Um, yeah, as an overall, at the end of these reviews, we go to an overall take whether we should recommend to everyone to rediscover it or just leave it in the past and not to worry about it. And I'm definitely leaning towards the leave it in the past mode. I know by your what you're saying, you are too. In that there's
Yeah.
probably a ton of more movies out there that are more palatable for comedies, for kids movies, and just thinking about it now, it was more or less banking on or trying to bank on Fred Savage as the star, and I guess potentially Howie Mandel in his comedy, but uh, Fred Savage is probably the draw,
Mm-hmm.
to making this movie, and I thought that, like I said, I thought he did a fine job with it, but the story just wasn't there
No.
to follow through and to make it one to go back and rewatch over and over again or any of that. So yeah, we it was kind of a downer, kind of a bummer. I thought I thought it was going to be a little bit better than it turned out to be after watching it, and I was disappointed a little bit. There was some fun stuff in there, but I guess more or less it's yeah, you can skip this one if you see it
Yeah.
on Netflix and go on to something else maybe you hadn't watched before. But that's gonna wrap unless you had anything else you wanted to add on the movie.
Nothing on the movie. We're going to be talking about in our next episode TV shows, and
Yep.
again, it'll be a mystery because we don't even know what we're going to be talking about because we got to find out if it exists. So
Yeah.
stay
Well,
tuned.
we know it exists. It's just a matter of finding, where it exists. And we've had some suggestions along the way. I know I have a few items here and there on shows to rediscover, and I'm just going to go over to our list here. Where is it? Crap. I thought I had it up right here.
It's there.
Oh, right beside it. Just going through the list here real quick onto some TV shows that I had written down that we could cover. And again, this is all based on what's available on streaming now and might be available on DVD or Blu-ray.
Right.
Come on, Google.
We got some of the listing is Manimal, which was in 1983.
That was a show where the guy was able to turn into different animals, and he was kind of I think, private detective or something. I've never watched the show.
Never heard of it.
I've heard people. It's kind of more of a cult show. Automan, I think it was by the same company. I think both of those might be Glenn Larson's shows, now that I think about it. But Automan was another one, very short-lived and kind of in that same vein as Tron. I don't know if he turned into the car. I guess he did. But it's this like weird-looking car, almost looks like a Countach, but it's neon. Have you ever watched that show? No?
Never watched it. I've heard it and seen it in passing in 80s posts here and there, but not very extensive of what.
One, I'm just going to throw this out there because I just heard somebody tell me not too long ago that Hey Vern, It's Ernest is on Tubi.
All right.
That could be one that we could do next.
If it's in Tubi, I'm there. I like my Tubi.
Yeah, a lot of these like older, obscure, retro shows seem to pop up there first. Amazon has some older stuff too, but
they do.
That just came to mind, so maybe that's a good one to pull off for next time. But again, I guess we'll make it a mystery. See what we got time to do and how many episodes, and
that's it.
We're
hopefully it won't be as long of a between episodes.
We get busy as parents, as our main income providers for our household. But yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that coming off of this movie review. So thank you everybody for tuning in to Rediscovered, and we'll steer you away from Little Monsters. But if you want to check it out, and maybe you'll agree with us once you come through the other side. Just let us know. We got plenty of places to let us know on the website, on social media, and we'd love to hear your take on Little Monsters. If it's one that you've watched many times over the years, would love to hear from you guys too, and what keeps you coming back to it, because obviously we didn't see much in there to to circle back to. So leave us some feedback if you would, please.
And that really wraps it up. But once again, we want to thank you for visiting us with Rediscover the 80s and Rediscovered. We want you to rediscover all those awesome classics with us. And please, like Jason said, visit us and write to us on Rediscover the 80s or any of our social media outlets. Until next time, I'm Wyatt, and that's Jason over there. And thank you for watching and listening.
Perfect. And thank you, YouTube, for checking us out on there. And would highly recommend you check out our podcast channel, because I do like to do some production work as we get these shows aired, and intro music, trailers, that sort of thing, especially when we're reviewing these shows and such. And
cutting out all the bad audio that
You're
happens through
right.
Skype and whatever process.
Right. Yeah. Making it sound slick and clean and all that stuff. Getting rid of all of our kindas and ums. I
But
say
hey, that
kinda a lot.
our request still goes out to you. So if you see something or you have any comments, likes or dislikes, feel free to share it with us, whether on YouTube or back on Rediscover the 80s.
Right. And if you got a suggestion for us, please
Yes.
leave that in the comments. Say, hey, you guys need to circle back to this movie. You probably have not seen it, or maybe have only seen it back in the day. We'd love to get those kind of
Oh
suggestions and to
yeah.
add to our list because we have a pretty large list, but there's still I'm obviously some out there that we probably have not even wrote down or thought about. So
That's right.
please let us know what you think about that, and we'll get it in the list there. But for Wyatt, thanks you. This is Jason. Thank you guys for watching us over there on YouTube and helping us to spread the love. Please follow, subscribe, and tell somebody. Yeah, just tell a friend.
That's it.
The old fashioned way, word of mouth.
Yeah. It works.
All right, we'll get out of here. Thanks for watching.